All right, so the first step is to create the action that fetches the data by this slug. So let's go ahead and go into our lib actions, product actions, and we're going to add a comment here. We'll say get, let's say get single product by its slug. So we're going to export an async action, an async function, and let's call this get product by slug, and it's going to take in a slug, which is going to be not a slug, which is going to be a string. Okay, so this is going to be pretty simple. We can just simply return await and then use the Prisma object and then the product, because that's the model we're working with, and then find first, which will do just that. It'll find the first match, and we're going to pass in where the we want to say where the slug is equal to the slug that's passed in. And that's it. Very simple function. And then we're going to go and create the page. Now, since this is dynamic, right, the slug, what we do is go into our app. We're going to use the root group, create a new folder called product. Okay, so that's file-based routing. That's this right here. And then this is going to be represented by a folder with brackets and slug. Okay, if you were using an ID here, then you would have brackets with ID. So that's going to have a page.tsx, and let's say SFC. We'll say product details page. And just for now, let's just output details, and that should show up. Good. Now we have to get this, right? We have to get that slug. And in Next.15, it's a little different. So what we do is we pass in props and then an object, and then what we want to get, which is the params, right? So when you want to get what is after the slash, that's a param. If we wanted to get something like this, question mark name, and then a value, that would be the search params, which we'll be doing later for certain things. But for the params, we're going to say the type is going to be a promise, and it's going to be a slug, which is going to be a string. Okay, now we have access to props.params.slug. We have access to that, but I'm going to deconstruct. So right here, I'm going to say get the slug, get the slug from the props params. However, this is asynchronous, so we do have to await on props.params, which means we have to make this function async. So it's a little different than Next.14 and earlier versions. But yeah, now we should have access to the slug, which we can test out here. Just output it, and there we go. So we need to bring in our action because we need to fetch the product by the slug. So let's say import, and we want the get product by slug. And I'm also going to bring in not found. I'm going to bring that in from next navigation. And then under this, we're going to say const product and set that to await get products by or product by slug. Pass in the slug that we got from the URL. And then I'm just going to simply say if not product, then if not product, then we're just going to call not found, which will just send the user to the not found page. And then to test it out, we'll come down here and just output the product name. All right, so now you can see we're getting the product name. If I put something in here that doesn't exist, then it should, yeah, it takes us to the not found. All right, good. So far, so good. We're going to be using some shadcn components. One of them is called badge, so we do have to install that. So npx shadcn at latest add badge. That's going to be for the stock option. It already exists for me, so I'm just going to say yes. All right, so let's bring in a couple components that we need. What am I doing? I want to go, I'm just going to go above these, and let's import. So we need badge. Okay, we need button, and we need card. So card and card content. And then we also want the price, product price component. So I'm going to import product price. Now we're going to just construct the page. So let's come down here and let's see, we'll get rid of this product name. And then in the fragment, we're going to have a section, and we're going to have, basically we're going to have through these 3 columns, but it's actually going to be 5 columns, but the first and second are going to span 2 of those 5. So the first one will be the images column. So I'm just going to label them. So images column. So that's going to be a, actually, you know what? Before that, we need to create our grid. So grid, and what we're going to do is have 1 column on small screens, so our mobile screens, so grid calls 1, but then we'll say on medium screens and up, we want to use grid calls 5. and then the images column is going to go in that. Okay, and the images column is going to have a class of call span 2, because like I said, I want it to span 2 of those 5 columns. Now I'm not going to do the image component yet, so I'll just put a placeholder there. So that's where the images component will go. Okay, and then underneath that is going to be our details column. And that's also going to span, let's say call span 2, and let's do padding 5. So this details column is this right here, where we have the brand and the category, the title. We're not going to have the stars yet, but we'll just put the number rating, the price, and description. So let's add that stuff. So this is going to be in a flex box, and let's say flex-call and give it a gap 6. And then we're going to have in a paragraph, we'll do the product.brand, and right next to that, we'll do the product.category. So if we take a look, okay, polo and men's dress shirts, then let's add an H1, and I'm just going to use an H3 bold class, and that's going to be the product name. There we go. Okay, next we're going to have the rating and the number of reviews. So underneath that H1, let's put a paragraph, and we'll say product rating, and let's say of, and then we'll have the product num reviews, and we'll just put the word reviews after it. All right, so 4.5 of 10 reviews, and like I said, we'll update that with the stars later. Now, underneath that paragraph is where we want our price, but I'm going to wrap that in a div with flex-call. We're going to do gap-3, and then on small screens, let's see, go right here. We're going to say on small screens, I want it to be a flex row, and on small screens, I want items-center. Okay, and then in this div is where our product price component is going to go. Okay, and that takes in a value, and the value is going to be the product.price, but I want to format it as a number, so we're going to wrap it in number. So product.price, and then I'm going to add some classes here because we want to give it that the green text and green background. So for classes, let's do a width of 24. Let's do rounded-full, BG-green 100, so light green, and then the text is going to be green 700. And then let's do a padding X5 and then padding Y2. Okay, so there's our price. Then we want the description, so that's going to go under, let's see, under this flex, still within the call span, the details call. So we're going to go right here, and let's do margin top 10 to push it down a little bit. And we'll have a paragraph. Actually, let's do font dash semi-bold, not demi-bold, and say description. Okay, then underneath that, we'll have a paragraph, and we'll have our actual product.description. Okay, so that's our details column. Now the last one, this one, I'm going to call the action column. So let's see, this div ends here. So now we have the action column, and we're going to have a div, and in that we'll have the card component. That needs to be uppercase, card. Okay, and then we have our card content, and I'm just going to give that a class name of P-4. And then let's have a div with a class of margin bottom 2 and flex and justify dash, we'll do justify between. And then we'll have just a div with the label of price, and then a div with the actual product price component. So we're using this product price twice on this page. This one isn't going to have the green background and stuff though. We just need to pass in the value, and the value is going to be wrapped in number. So product price. Okay, so yeah, we should see this. And then we need the stock. So this right here, and this is where we use the badge. So it's going to say if it's in stock or not. So let's go, let's see, we want to go under this div and actually create a div with the same classes. So right here, and end it. And then within that, I'm just going to have a status title or label. And then we're going to put a ternary here because we need to say if the product.stock, if it's greater than 0, then show something else, show something else. And in the first one, let's put a badge. Okay, so badge like that. And I'm going to give it a variant because you can add different styles. This variant is going to be outline. And we're going to say in stock. Okay, and then we can just copy this line, and in this set of parentheses, we're going to do a badge, but the variant is going to be destructive because this is going to be out of stock, so it's going to be red. So out of stock, and if we check it out, we get status in stock. Now, if I go to this one, we should see in red out of stock. All right, so now the button we're going to add if there's stock. So let's see, we want to go under this div. And again, we're going to say if the product.stock is greater than 0. Okay, so it's greater than 0, then actually no, we don't need an else. So I mean, we could do like null or whatever, but let's use the double ampersand. Okay, so then we'll have a div with a class of flex-center, and then we'll have our button. So let's say button, and whoops, we want to do that. Let's say add to cart, and I'm just going to add a class of w-full. Okay, so that's out of stock, so obviously there's no button. Let's go to this one, and there we go. We have our add to cart, which of course right now isn't going to do anything. And before we get to all the cart stuff, in the next video, I want to create the images, which is going to be in its own component where we can click on these smaller thumbnails and show whatever image is selected. So now we want to have the images here, and basically we want to have a large image and then smaller ones where we can click and display the larger one, which is pretty simple to do actually. We just need to loop through the images, display them here, and set the source of this one based on whichever one is current, and we can have a piece of state called current. So let's create a new component. It's going to be in components shared product, and we're going to call it product-images.tsx, and let's say SFC, we'll call it product images. Okay, and it's going to take in a prop, it's going to take in a prop of images, which is going to be an array of strings. So we'll say string in brackets. We're going to, in the return for now, we'll just say images. And I just want to bring this in. What is this all about? Implicitly has any type. It should be images, and then for the type, images string. So now let's bring it into our page that we created in the last video. So right here, we're going to go import product images, and we're going to put it right where we have the comment here. So just get rid of that, and let's say product images, and it's going to take in images, which we set to product.images. Save that, and now we should just see the text, and we can just test to see if the images are actually coming in. So let's make this a little bigger, and there we go. So you can see the array of images for this product. All right, now we're going to actually make this a client component because we're going to be using the use state hook. So up at the top, let's say use client, and then we're going to import, let's say use state. We're also going to import the image component, and then we're also going to use that CN utility so that we can have conditional classes. So we're going to say import CN from libutils. Now let's create a piece of state. Actually, we can get rid of this console log, and let's say const, and our state is going to be called current, and then to change that, we'll have set current, and set that to use state. Okay, and then the default is just going to be 0. Now here, let's get rid of this text, and this is going to be a wrapper div, and give it a class of space-y4, which will just put some space between the elements vertically. And then we'll have our image, should be uppercase image, and let's add some attributes onto this. Now the source, we're going to set that equal to, let's say, images, and we want the current index. Okay, so it's going to be set to whatever that current index is, which is 0 by default, which is the first image. Then for the alt, I'm just going to set that to product image. Actually, yeah, we'll just say product image. And then let's set the width. So width is going to be set to 1,000, and height set to 1,000, and then class name. So for that, we're going to set a min height, so min h, and I'm doing a static, I guess what you want to call it is a static value of 300 pixels. So in Tailwind, you can do that. You can just have brackets and then put the actual number of pixels. And let's say object.cover and object center. And that should be within the quotes. So this right here should be at the end. All right, so I'm just going to save that. And there we go. We have our large image. So now underneath the image component is where we're going to loop through all of our images. Let's put this in a class of flex so they're side by side. And then we're going to say images. And let's map through those. And we're going to pass in a function where it takes in the image and also the index. Okay, and then we're going to set that to some parentheses. And in those parentheses, we're going to have a div. Okay, and this div is going to have a key. Since this is a list, it has to have a unique key, which I'm going to set that to, we'll just set it to image. Okay, and then we're going to have our class names. Now, actually, no, we'll do that after, because those are going to be the conditional classes. Let's just show the images here. So I'm going to say, once again, use our image component, and then we're going to set the source, simply set that equal to the image. And then the alt, I'll just set that to image, and actually, we'll just set it to the text of image. And then the width on this is going to be 100. These are the small ones. So height, we'll set that to 100. Save it, and there we go. Now we just want to be able to, a couple things. We want to be able to click on it and set the current image, but we also want to show a border based on if it's the current image or not. So let's add, let's see, the div that's around the image, we're going to add an onClick. And all we have to make that do is call a function and then simply set current. And we're going to set it to the index. So now if I click the back one, it changes to that. Click that, goes back. Now we just need the conditional classes, so let's add onto this div class name, and we're going to set it to curly braces with CN, and let's pass in border. We're going to do margin right 2, and then cursor, let's say cursor pointer, and then on hover, I want it to have an orange border, so we'll say border dash orange dash 600. All right, and then let's put a comma here, and we'll say if the current, so if the current value is equal to the index, so the current index, then we're going to have, we're going to change the border to orange 500. So let's say border dash orange dash 500, and save. Okay, so now you can see when I hover over it, it's orange, and when I select it, it stays orange. And that's it. So it's our product images. Now, since we have the details page and we have, our home page with the products, I think that this is a good place to actually do our initial deployment. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and get set up with Vercel and deploy our application.